food.
I need Taco Bell.
Let's go!
All right, it's gone. It's gone.
It is gone.
This was full when I got here.
There you go, Sam.
Break it over your head. No, I'm just kidding.
Sounds like my opening day.
All right.
Yeah. Right.
Spinny, they're already chirping at us in the comments a little bit.
Yeah.
Friday show before we head into the weekend. You and I both sat here, put on a wax that we thought Ohio State was going to win this football game.
Yeah.
Now, for me, it's because of the absence of a fully healthy Blake Corum, which seemed like their entire offense, especially the prior week against Illinois at home.
Yes.
And I was like, that doesn't look good. You and I actually together watching into that one.
Yeah, we did.
And I was like, without Corum, I don't really see them getting it done. Beforehand, I swear to God, on everything, I thought they were going to win the game. But with Corum not healthy and having the shit show, I guess I'd say, against Illinois at home, it just didn't look pretty.
It did not.
No one expected JJ the ball.
I did not. I did not expect that to happen. We hadn't seen it all year. I don't think anybody expected it to happen that way in that fashion. It was impressive. Like I said, without Blake Corum, who has been the majority of their offense for the entire season, Michigan went out there and manhandled Ohio State in the second half. That's all you can say. It was an impressive victory. It was a dominating victory. And it started really in the first half with J.J. McCarthy throwing the ball down the field. You saw Cornelius Johnson finish the game with 4 catches for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, those are Randy Moss Thanksgiving Day numbers. He made some great plays. And then the defense is what stepped up the most. The defense, to me, is what kept them in the game. Because that game could have been 21-3. Ohio State after the first couple. I remember I texted Sam about halfway through the first half, and I was like, it's not looking great right now, man. What's your worry number? And he said it's at 8.5 right now. It's not great, and I understood it because they didn't look like they couldn't run the ball. JJ missed a couple throws, and it seemed like Ohio State was moving at will. Yep. But the defense stepped up. They kept them in that game. They made plays to force punts out of to force field goals and punts out of Ohio State, which is something I didn't see coming. And they went out there and dominated. And then in the second half, it was just a complete landslide of domination for Michigan. You saw it with, obviously, it started with J.J. McCarthy running the ball. This, Sam, you can attest to this. I'm a big J.J. McCarthy fan. I remember seeing him come in the end of games last year's, making ridiculous throws, like on the run, off his back leg, 50 yards down the field. I was like, Jesus Christ, why isn't this kid playing right now? And he comes in there in this game, and he does everything I haven't seen him do all year that I've been waiting for him to do, that I've been asking, why isn't Jim Harbaugh letting this kid cook? And he was making the throws in the first half. He dotted, obviously, the one to Cornelius Johnson, you throw it anywhere, and because he had 20 yards of separation. Sure. But the other one to Cornelius Johnson, when he had a face full of pressure off his back foot to the sideline, beautiful throw. And then coming into the second half, they started letting him use his legs, which is a weapon that Michigan hasn't had out of a quarterback in a long time. Since Devin Gardner or Denard Robinson, whoever you want to say, they haven't had a quarterback that can run like that, and he finished those runs. He wasn't running out of bounds. He was running through the face of Ohio State defenders. So that was impressive. And then it obviously ended with them going back to Michigan football, line them up, shove it up their butts, and Donovan Edwards popped off 2 70-plus yard rushing touchdowns to put the final nail in the coffin. I thought I was going to have to drive my dad to the hospital. My dad was in the garage. And you all know he's still recovering from his surgery. He was screaming louder than I've ever heard him scream in his entire life. Wow! I was like, Dad, you're going to pop a stitch or something. He was so happy. It was an extremely impressive win by the Michigan Wolverines. Yeah, no, that was one of the most impressive wins. Honestly, I don't want to say in program history, but in recent years since I've been alive. And like Spencer said, it all starts with the defense. Overall, they held that high-powered Ohio State offense to 23 points. And going into that game, if you're a Michigan fan and you said, we're going to hold Ohio State to 23 points, it's like, we're going to win this game. Oh, yeah. And J.J. McCarthy, the guy that I fought for hard in the offseason coming into this year, as this is a guy that can take your program to the next level. We hadn't seen it all year, except in very small doses, but they were winning. It didn't hurt them. But in this game, in the first half, when Michigan couldn't run the football, it was J.J. McCarthy who made the plays that kind of catapulted that offense. When it was 10-3 and it was 3rd and 9, I think we all were at
as people watching the game kind of thinking like, how the hell is Michigan going to win this game? But he hit that 3rd and 9 throw to Cornelius Johnson, and then Cornelius Johnson, who also deserves credit, shook a defender, took it all the way to the house. Then they gave him a field goal, and then again, J.J. McCarthy hit the deep ball.
Yeah.
It wasn't a difficult throw, but he still had to hit it. Cornelius Johnson had to run a great route, and he took it to the end zone. It was 17-13. And then in the second half, J.J. McCarthy had a 19-yard run, and then another deep ball to Colston Loveland, which was a beautiful throw. And then after he had J.J. McCarthy had kind of set the table, started the game, added a rushing touchdown, it was Donovan freaking Edwards who was the Mariano Rivera and closed that game out with two 75-yard-plus runs.
Impressive.
It was amazing. Michigan absolutely dominated Ohio State. They took their manhood again. They choked the life out of them. And now it's Michigan who runs the Big Ten. Ohio State had all year to be pissed off and sulk and prepare for this, and they couldn't do anything about it because Michigan imposed their will. They're the better team, and now they run the Big Ten. Michigan runs the Big Ten, not Ohio State.
If you would have come up to me and said, if Michigan wins this game, do they run the Big Ten? I would have pumped the brakes a little bit. Obviously, for the time being, yes, they're the champions. But I still think it takes a little more than 2 years to kind of flip that script. But the way they did it, the facet in how they went into their home, like you said, Ohio State has been stewing on that loss for 365 days. They've been thinking about how Michigan thumped them in the Big House all year. And what did they do? They came into the Horseshoe and took their lunch money, absolutely nut punched, proved they were the bigger, stronger team, proved they were the better coached team. Yep. It was an extremely impressive victory on all fronts, and yeah, that's all you got to say. Hats off to Michigan, man. They played, like I said, one of the most dominant second halves in football I've ever seen.
Hey, Michigan's second halves this year they're a second half team. They did it against Penn State, they did it against Michigan State, and now they do it at Ohio State, at the Horseshoe, a place they hadn't won in 22 years. This is the type of game that kind of exercises some demons. I know last year was sort of that as well, beating them for the first time in 10 years, beating Ohio State for the first time in 10 years, but then going to Columbus and beating Ohio State in the fashion that they did. There was no flukes, there was no weather, there was no sort of questionable call. It was a dominating performance, and you also saw an element of Michigan's offense that you hadn't seen all year. Now you have to fear the Michigan passing offense. You have to fear J.J. McCarthy and Cornelius Johnson, whose connection all of a sudden is lethal. Yeah. Ohio State dared J.J. McCarthy and the wide receivers to beat them, and they did just that. It was honestly, it was beautiful. And what Donovan Edwards also proved in this game is that, like Spencer said, I've said it all year. I've hyped up the Blake Corum Heisman train all year, but Donovan Edwards is the better back. Mm-hmm. He is the more explosive back. He's the more versatile back, and he closed that. J.J. McCarthy was the starter, and then Donovan Edwards closed it out, along with that defense only giving up 23 points. Dominating, beautiful performance. And
I've been with you on that too, Lockstep. You can attest to that Donovan Edwards is the better back. He's more well-rounded. I think he can do everything that Blake Corum does and provides an element that Blake Corum does not. And if Michigan fans really like, a legitimate Heisman case is going to be Donovan Edwards next year.
Yep.
Like, the guy is going to be doing what Blake Corum did this year, where he's going for 130, 140 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and then on top of that, add 7 catches for 80 yards. Like, the guy is a monster, and he is impressive. He's that 5-star back out of Detroit that they asked for, and he's exactly what they bargained for. It's impressive, man. I am a big Donovan Edwards guy too, but I was happy to see them let JJ open it up a little bit.
It's crazy too, because I feel like, and the only reason I mentioned a little bit earlier, and it's like way off, by the way, but I mentioned like this is almost like, can I ask, is this Michigan on a trajectory towards up, or is Ohio State on a trajectory towards down?
I think it's a little bit of both.
I think so too, and I don't want to take any credit away from Jim Harbaugh, especially, and I want to say this for like the last segment, but like the ugliness that went on during the offseason with this program in terms of like Jim Harbaugh flirting back and forth between bouncing to the NFL.
Not only that, they got a new offensive coordinator, they got a new defensive coordinator, and it looks like they haven't missed a heartbeat.
Exactly. And the split of the two, outside of Mike McDonald, obviously, because he had the relationship with his brother, but it was a little bit ugly too. You know what I'm saying? Like the offensive coordinator, the former, I forgot his name, but it was a little bit of trash talking. I almost felt
Josh
like.
Gaddis.
Yeah. Like it was an ugly breakup, and then obviously the situation flirting with like going to the pros for him to come back with like lesser like name value, I should say, and have these guys buy in.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real about it. Like, the schedule was a bit of a cupcake schedule, like leading into this game, but to be at the shoe and execute to the point that they did, like it was phenomenal performance by Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines, 110%. No one, Sam, did you like? I know as a fan, you thought they'd win. You at least you wanted to win. You probably wouldn't be able to say they'd lose, but like, did you think it was going to be like that?
No, absolutely not. I thought it would be a close game. I thought they would have to dominate in the trenches from start to finish. But what actually happened is, at the beginning, at least in the first half and early second half, it was J.J. McCarthy making big plays. Like, he had 3 touchdown passes of over 45 plus yards. It's unbelievable. It showed me something about a Jim Harbaugh coach Michigan team that I didn't think was possible. I thought if Michigan were to win, they always had to kind of win in a phone booth. Sort of run the ball, stop the run, get pressure, not really open it up. But they did it in this game because they had to. You saw how bad their offense looked early on. They couldn't run the ball. JJ was missing some throws. But once he hit that one to Cornelius Johnson and Cornelius Johnson did the rest, it was just like they realized, I think the coaching staff and the players, that we can do this in a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
And they did. So, of course, I didn't expect it to be a 22-point bludgeoning, but it was. And I think even the biggest Michigan doubters, the biggest Ohio State fans have to look at Michigan and just be like, oh my God, we've got a problem on our hands right now. This Michigan team is legit.
Yeah.
100%. One other point I want to make, I kept saying Friday, I kept pounding my table and saying it. Big-time players make big-time plays. Your 5-star recruit, J.J. McCarthy, went out there and did just that.
Yeah, in the biggest game of the season so far.
Absolutely.